Somewhere in the world, right now, a woman is screaming. She is doing the most natural thing a living body can do. She is giving birth. And for her, as for nearly every human mother before her, it is dangerous and it is agony. This is strange, and we rarely stop to notice how strange. A horse drops its foal and is grazing again within the hour. A cat delivers a litter alone, in a closet, in silence. Across almost the entire animal kingdom, birth is quick, quiet, and survivable on your own. Only one creature turns it into a life-threatening ordeal. Only one needs another pair of hands in the room to get through it safely. Us. For most of history, childbirth was one of the most common ways for a human to die. And the reason is not bad luck or a cruel god. The reason is written into the shape of your skeleton, placed there by a single change millions of years ago. A change that nearly broke the human body in half. And that same change is the only reason you exist to hear this. We like to imagine evolution as a craftsman, slowly polishing each creature towards something better, stronger, more perfect. That is not how it works. Evolution does not build, it bargains. Every advantage is bought with a price somewhere else, and the deal is rarely clean. Sometimes the price is small, and sometimes a species pays for one gift with a wound it will carry for the rest of its existence. Our ancestors made that kind of bargain, the most expensive one in our history. And to understand it, you have to go back to the moment a frightened, forgettable ape did something almost no animal does. It stood up. Millions of years ago, in a changing Africa, our ancestors rose off their knuckles and onto two legs. We treat this as the triumphant first scene of the human story, the noble march toward becoming us. It was not noble. At first, it was almost suicidal. A body built for four legs does not simply become a two-legged body for free. The entire architecture had to be rebuilt mid-flight while the animal still had to survive every single day. The spine, once a horizontal beam slung between four supports, was wrenched upright into a fragile vertical column, balancing the whole weight of the body on its base. You are still paying for that. The back pain that will eventually visit almost every human alive, the slipped discs, the worn-out knees, the hernias, the collapsing arches of the feet. None of it is random misfortune. It is the running invoice for standing up, charged to a frame that was never designed to be vertical and never fully finished adapting to it. But the back was the cheap part of the bill. To balance and move on two legs, the pelvis had to narrow and tighten. The wide, open hips of a four-legged animal would have made walking upright clumsy and exhausting. So evolution squeezed the pelvis inward, pulling the bones into a tighter bowl. And for a long stretch of our story, that was fine. Our ancestors had small heads. A small head fits through a narrow opening without trouble. Then something began to grow. Over the next 2 million years, the human brain swelled to more than 3 times the size of an ape's. It is the organ that would build language, fire, cities, everything. It is the reason we run the planet. But a large brain needs a large skull to hold it. And that enormous skull now had to pass through a pelvis that evolution had deliberately made small. Picture the collision. One force pulling the birth canal narrower for walking, another force pushing the head wider for thinking. Two demands, pulling in opposite directions, meeting at the single most vulnerable moment in a human life, the moment of being born. Anthropologists have a name for this trap, the obstetrical dilemma. And whatever the precise details, which researchers still argue over, the outcome is undeniable. Human birth became a near impossible fit. The widest part of the baby and the narrowest part of the mother, forced through each other by sheer muscle, with both lives hanging on whether it works. No other primate gives birth like this. To them it is routine. To us it became a battle. There is one more detail that makes the point almost unbearable. In nearly every other species, a mother giving birth instinctively seeks solitude. The human mother does the opposite. We are, as far as we know, the only animal for whom birth became a social event, a moment that normally requires another person there to help, to catch, to turn the child. Evolution made our most private act impossible to do safely alone. The pain was so severe that helping hands became part of how our species survives being born. And evolution's solution to the battle was, in its own way, the most disturbing part of all. If the head could not get smaller, and the hips could not get wider, there was only one option left. Get the baby out before it was ready. So human infants are, in a sense, born too early, evicted, while still half-formed. Other animals walk within hours, run within days. A human newborn cannot hold up its own head. It cannot crawl, cannot cling, cannot do a single thing to keep itself alive. It is the most helpless infant produced by any creature on Earth, and it stays that way for years. This should have been a death sentence. A slow, weak, soft-skinned animal. A birth that kills mothers. A baby that is useless for years. By every rule of survival, this is a recipe for extinction. This is not how you build a winner. This is how you vanish. And yet, here we are, billions of us, on every continent. Because the very same bargain that broke our bodies handed us 3 things that no other animal had. Start with the hands. Standing up did something no four-legged creature can manage. It lifted our hands off the ground. Forever. Hands that were no longer needed for walking became free every hour of every day, to carry, to throw, to shape a stone into a blade. The upright posture that wrecked our spine is the only reason we have hands free to build a world at all. Then there is the second gift, and it is hidden in the way you move. You are a slow animal. Almost any predator can outsprint you. But ask a different question. Ask not who is fastest, but who can keep going, and the answer changes completely. Over long distances, in the heat of the day, the human body is one of the finest endurance machines that has ever existed. Our long legs, our springy tendons, our near hairless skin, and millions of sweat glands let us shed heat while we move, hour after hour, when almost every other mammal must stop and pant in the shade or collapse. Think about how unusual that is. You are one of the sweatiest animals alive. You lost almost all your fur and turned your skin into a cooling system, soaked in glands that bleed heat into the air as you run. A creature covered in fur, sprinting under the sun, cooks itself within minutes. You do not. You can keep moving while the world overheats around you. Researchers propose that this turned our weak ancestors into a new kind of hunter. Not fast, relentless. Picture it. A hunter picks one animal out of the herd and simply begins to follow. The animal bolts, easily outrunning him, and stops to rest. He arrives. It bolts again. Again he arrives. There is no sprint he can win and no shade he is forced into. Hour after hour under the high sun, the gap never closing, until the animal, unable to sweat the way the man can, staggers, overheats, and goes down, brought to the ground by a creature that never even caught up to it. Some scientists still debate how central this running really was. But the bodies of hunter-gatherers who chase prey this way, even today, in the Kalahari and the canyons of Mexico, suggest the ability is real and very old. A clawless, fangless ape had become something the savannah had never seen, a predator that did not stop. And then the third gift, the strangest one, the helpless baby. Because an infant that needs years of care cannot be raised by one exhausted mother alone. It demands a group. It demands that others help feed her, protect her, carry the child, teach it. That fragile, useless newborn forced our ancestors into deep cooperation, into sharing, into patience, into teaching across generations. The long, defenseless human childhood is exactly what gave the giant brain time to fill. Years of safety, watching, learning, absorbing everything the group knew before being thrown into the world. The weakness was not a flaw in the design. The weakness was the design. Stand back and look at the whole bargain at once. We took an animal that should not have survived. We gave it a spine that aches, a birth that kills, and a child that cannot fend for itself. And in exchange, that animal received free hands, an engine for endless pursuit, and a childhood long enough to grow the most powerful brain on the planet. That was the trade. Constant, inherited pain in return for the entire world. Every other branch of the human family tree eventually died out. The other upright apes, the cousins, the dead ends. We were never the strongest of them, and there is good reason to think there were moments when our own numbers fell dangerously low. Genetic evidence hints that more than once, the entire ancestral population of our lineage may have collapsed to a frighteningly small number. A few thousand breeding individuals, perhaps fewer, scattered and clinging on. At those moments, everything that would ever become humanity was balanced on a knife's edge. One bad stretch of years from disappearing completely, the way every other branch eventually did. It did not end. The compromise held. The painful, half-finished, contradictory body made it through. So the next time your back aches at the end of a long day, understand what you are actually feeling. You are feeling the oldest decision your lineage ever made. The moment a small, frightened animal rose onto two legs and began paying a debt that has never stopped coming due, in every spine, through every birth, for millions of years. You were never an optimized creature. You were never the finished product evolution was aiming for. You are a four-legged animal still learning to stand, a bargain that is still being paid. The pain is not a flaw in the machine. The pain is the price of the machine, and it is the reason there was anyone here at all.